All right, so my name is Savannah Parison. I am the lead advisor at CCS, and I have been at UCSB for about 3 years at this point. I am a recent addition to the CCS team. So I have not been here a full year yet, which means I haven't seen the complete cycle of the year. But my colleague Megan, who I'll hand off to introduce herself shortly, has been. So I just want to say hello, Megan.
Hello, I'm Megan. I'll go next. I am the other staff advisor. I just hit my 2-year anniversary with CCS yesterday. So happy 2 years at CCS to me. And I've been on campus working for 5 years. So lots of campus knowledge. I'm also an alumni of UCSB, but not CCS. I was a sociology student. So yeah, I'm happy to see you all here today.
So faculty, if you would like to go next, I don't know if you want to stick to an alphabetical order idea or if you'd like to do something else. It's up to you.
Go ahead, John.
Hi, my name is John Lado. I coordinate the biology program here at CCS. I'm a faculty member in ecology, evolution, marine biology, and in CCS, and I've been here for 13 years. Kathy.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Foltz. I'm a professor in molecular cell and developmental biology and also CCS biology. And I've been here longer than John. I won't say how many years, but it's a real pleasure to be here today. I love talking to students, and I see a lot of students that are my advisees or that I know. It's really good to see you guys. I miss you. And yeah, happy to answer any questions. Leroy.
Hi, I'm Leroy Leverin. I'm faculty in CCS chemistry and biochemistry, and also in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. I've been here, gosh, faculty for 20 years. I actually was a grad student here. So about 2.5, that's a quarter of a century. I've been here a long time. I didn't have gray hair back then. But anyways, I've been in CCS for about the last 18 years.
All right.
Who's next?
We'll transition to our students, I think. I think that's it on our faculty. So Charlie, I think that would mean you're up first.
Cool. Hi, I'm Charlie Moffett. I just graduated from CCS biology at the end of March. My focus kind of within CCS Bio has been biochemistry and neurobiology.
Hi, I'm Justin Bernstein. I also just graduated from CCS this last March. And my degree was in, my focus was sort of in chemistry, but I was a chem and biochem major.
Hi, I'm Matthew Valdivieso. I'm a CCS Chem major. I'm a sophomore right now, so we're still making it through.
Michelle, I think that's you.
Okay, it's me. Okay, hi, I'm Michelle. I'm a third-year CCS bio major, and I'm interested in biochemistry.
I'm not sure if Mira is here. She might not be. And in which case, we will move along to Mitra.
Hi, so my name is Mitra. I'm a second-year biochem major, and yeah, still working along.
All right. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here on a Tuesday afternoon and taking the time to talk with all these students. Our first question that we kind of get cut to the chase with is these are all students who have likely multiple offers from different universities and are debating about which university to register at, which one to commit to. And so especially for the students, we'll start with you. What was important for you when you were considering which college you wanted to attend? And what factored into your decision to come to CCS?
So when I was deciding which college to attend, for me, it was important to have kind of all the research opportunities provided by a large public research university. But I also didn't want to be like lost in like a sea of biology majors. So CCS was a great, but I ultimately made my choice to come to CCS because, you know, UCSB has a lot of really great research opportunities. But I still, like, freshman year, most of my biology courses were taken with like the little tiny core of CCS bio majors. So that's what made the most sense for me.
Yeah, I think for me it was pretty similar. I got into a few different schools, and then I was kind of trying to decide between them. And I think, like many students, my initial reaction was to kind of maybe immediately go to the school that that maybe had the best reputation as being sort of the most prestigious. But I kind of went to visit all of them, and then I found out about CCS, which I was admitted into, and I liked the idea of sort of having a smaller community within a bigger university, because I wanted to have access to a lot of sort of the benefits that that a bigger university can provide. But I liked the idea of having this smaller community where I could have smaller class sizes, have more interactions with advisors, and do something that was going to be a little more interdisciplinary, where I could kind of have more freedom in the coursework that I chose.
I can say that one of my main factors was knowing that I'd like live there for, you know, a lot of time. I had to be sure that it would be comfortable or, you know, enjoyable. And, you know, UCSB is right on the beach. You can't really get much better than that. And I preferred that over like bustling cities and stuff. So, and then, you know, learning about CCS is like the icing on the cake, because not only can you live somewhere beautiful, but you can be part of this program with a bunch of other students who want to accomplish things just like you and that are driven for that and are focusing on a goal. So I just thought being part of that kind of community would be really cool.
Okay, so like similar to what Charlie said, I knew I wanted to go to a school with a big emphasis on research. And like CCS really pushes its students to do research. And at that time, I wasn't like certain that I wanted to go to grad school, but the opportunities that like CCS Bio offered to support students, and like we have an extra colloquium that we can take that will give us more information about the grad school app process. That was really cool to learn about, and that was like an option if I wanted to take that route later on. And also what was really cool was, at least for CCS Bio, I know that we have a lot of course flexibility in taking like which operatives we want to take, and we can also take operatives early on. So just being able to dive deeply into biology when I started at UCSB, that was like a big plus. And also just like the whole aspect of being able to do research and the support that CCS offers.
Yeah, so a lot of people already touched on this, but definitely like the environment. So having that sort of like work-life balance was really important to me. And then also CCS is like unique across the UC system. And so getting to see that like one UC that was like such a large public research university had this sort of small program that was super targeted and like truly cared about their students and providing like the best opportunities for research, that was really important to me.
I'll see if the faculty want to chime in with anything else that they might see, or perhaps even like how students who are coming to CCS have a different experience within that, as opposed to the sort of letters and science programs as well. And I know there's three of you, so it's kind of awkward to start, but
yeah, I can chime in. I mean, I think one of the things that attracted me as a faculty member to being involved in CCS was the opportunity to work with students who really cared about what they were learning and really wanted to go deep into their subject. And that was very attractive to me. I mean, I teach a lot of letters and sciences courses as well, and I enjoy those just in a different way. But I really like working with students who kind of feel ownership of their education from the very first and really want to learn as much as they can and create knowledge. That's one of the kind of taglines for CCS is, you're participating in creating new knowledge, not just consuming it. And when you approach your education that way, you have a completely different view of how you're spending your time in the classroom and in the lab. And so for me, the attraction is working with these students, and that at a large university like this, you don't have to be in CCS to do research. You don't have to be in CCS to take a small class, but the whole community aspect of it, I think, influences the faculty as well. And so for me, it's very special, and I consider it a privilege to be able to work with CCS students. So.
Well said. I think that's similar to my take on it. I think the small community aspect is so important in CCS. Just thinking about general chemistry at UCSB, there's something around 2,000 to 2,200 students taking general chemistry in the university. And then I'm so lucky to be able to teach that class in CCS, where this year we actually had a really big class, which had about 21 students. But compared to, lecture halls of 350 with 2,000 students, the environment is just completely different. And I'm able to teach in a much more open fashion where we go off script a lot. People have questions, and then it goes down different pathways that we normally wouldn't have time to do in a big lecture. In big lectures, you kind of got to stay on script, get through the material, and CCS have flexibility to kind of meander around and explore, and it makes it hopefully more fun for the students, they can tell you, but certainly more fun for me as an instructor, because it's different every year. Like, even though it's the same class, it's different every year. And that's, for me, what I really enjoy.
I think the decision facing students this year is going to be particularly difficult, because a big part of making the choice, I think, is the sort of culture of the campus. And so it is, and I always encourage students to try and visit. With that not being possible for many of you this year, unless you've already visited, I think panels such as this are a great opportunity for you to ask fairly targeted questions about what is the culture like on the campus, because every UC campus, and I was at Berkeley for 10 years before coming here, the students are very, very similar in many ways, but the culture, the feeling on the campus is very, very different in ways that sometimes hard to describe. So I think I would encourage you to, as we go through the planned questions, to maybe think of some questions for the students about what this culture is like, how they would describe it, because it's very important for you to not just get a good biology education, have the opportunity for research, but to also be happy to be in a place where you feel at home, and where you feel it's a combination of many things, where you feel comfortable. Perhaps comfortable is the best word. So yeah, that's just all I would add.
John, that was a really good question. And I'm sort of like, oh, shoot. Like, so the next question I was going to ask was about research. So, I do think John raised an excellent point. Kind of flag that in your minds. And as we talk about the research you're involved in, maybe I can also ask our panelists to not necessarily talk about the research of others, like outside of what you do, but like how you interact with others as well in that process. So that might be something that just to keep in mind as we're thinking about that, because I do think CCS can be a very collaborative place as well. So our question is, what kind of research and creativity are you involved in? And sort of a part two of that question is, when did you get started in research at CCS? Because I know some students come in and they're chomping at the bit, they want to go. and I would like to give you an opportunity to kind of help students understand the different ways and phases that that might happen in.
Yeah, so I started working in doing research in Kenneth Kosick's lab the end of winter quarter of my freshman year. It's a neurobiology lab, and I've worked on a number of projects since I was there from my freshman year to my senior year. Ranging from working with proteins to working with RNAs. It's a lot of for a lot of the work I did was bench work, but I also was able to be exposed to things like bioinformatics and microscopy.
Hi. I joined so I'm kind of have a joint appointmentship in Megan Valentine's lab and Herbert Waite's lab. I do materials research, so I look specifically at quantifying mechanical properties in marine muscle plaques. So trying to improve wet adhesives. And I started working in that lab about 3 years ago, so the winter quarter of my sophomore year. And I think that lab has been a really cool experience for me in the sense that I've gotten to a lot of exposure to sort of techniques and learned about a lot of things that I wouldn't normally have had exposure to just through my normal coursework, since it is sort of materials focused and there's a lot of stuff involving mechanics. And in the second sense, I think it's been a really good experience for me as well, because I've gotten to kind of have my own project that I've been working on for a while now. Yeah.
So I'm currently, I have a position in the materials research lab, which kind of obvious, but they do research on different materials and stuff. And so I was mostly helping my postdoc with bench work. So I was generating samples, and she showed me some cool techniques of how to analyze the crystals. So a lot of the lab work will expose you to some cool techniques you wouldn't get to experience in a lab or like a lecture class. You know, going next to that giant like XRD machine is pretty impressive. How we can make these complicated mechanisms that tell you so much information on your like crystals and stuff. And it's just fun to go to, especially like the lab meetings when there's people like way above your pay grade, and you get to hear so much diverse research. It just makes you want to learn more so that you can understand at the same level they are. So that was my experience in my lab.
So I'm currently working in a chemistry department, but also in a mechanical engineering department, and I'm working on engineering light responsive nanoemulsions, and it's been pretty cool. I started working in this lab last summer, and I work under a grad student, and I've learned a lot of different techniques. I've gotten some experience in like chemical synthesis, which is really cool, and I was able to present my research. And I started off in research in my freshman year. Actually, I was in another lab before this lab, and that lab was actually in the electrical and computer engineering department, but there's a postdoc who is doing work on protein stabilization. So I was working there for a little over a year. And yeah, like to join these labs, well, for the first lab, I actually applied to a job on campus, and while I didn't get that job, the person who interviewed me recommended me to this postdoc who was like looking for an undergrad to help her out on a few projects, and that's how I ended up with my first lab position. And I had a good experience. You just learn a lot when you're doing research, and you get to interact with like grad students and like professors, and it was just like this new, very exciting, because first you kind of get trained closely for like a few weeks, and then you are able to like work on your own on the project and maybe eventually get your own project. And yeah.
So I started doing research at winter quarter of my freshman year, and that was in a biology lab on campus. And to be quite honest, I realized later on that I really didn't like what I was doing. I was doing a lot of cell work, and I think that's one of the things that comes with research is that you don't have to stick to the lab that you join. You have flexibility, and I think a lot of people tend to forget that as your interests revolve you sort of want to like be able to join other labs. And then I did an internship that summer and that made me interested in protein biochemistry. And so now I'm working in a protein biochemistry lab, just doing purification, expression. And I recently started doing more of the bio side, so like PCR and designing primers.
You're still muted, Savannah.
Thank you, Matt. Okay. So I was going to say I wanted to sort of extend the question to our faculty, both in terms of sort of student research and maybe some things that you have seen that you would like to add. You don't necessarily have to single anybody out, but the other question that sometimes our students might be interested in is what do you do as faculty? What are your interests, or how did you get started in the field and at UCSB?
Well, I think the research one would be a good question for Kathy. I just wanted to highlight what I heard there, which is actually a difference of this campus, in that some of the students listening might be surprised that there were biology students doing research in engineering labs and chemistry students doing research in biology labs. And that is actually a feature of this campus, that in some other campuses, research is much more siloed, for want of a better word, into particular departments, and you will find biology research going on in biology departments and not much elsewhere. This campus is very, very the opposite, in that there's biology research going on in physics departments, in engineering departments, psychology departments, and so CCS students have access to all of that wherever they can find something that interests them. And so it is surprising the sheer amount of opportunities that are present on the campus for undergraduates. But I'll throw that over to Kathy and ask Kathy about her can you say a word or two about your particular research, Kathy?
So I have to confess to, on behalf of Kathy, that she had to step away for a moment. So
yes, sorry.
She's back. Great.
I'm back. Yeah, so my own research is really focused on sort of the molecular mechanism of cell recognition and how cells make decisions in a sense. In other words, if they receive a signal from their environment or from another cell, what has to happen in order for them to respond and change their cellular state. And I've always had undergraduates involved in my research, and part of that motivation there is I just like having fresh ideas in the lab. And so the more diverse lab group I have, the more diverse ideas we're going to get. And having undergraduates in the lab always keeps the energy level up too. And I think for me, it's personally important because I wouldn't be here if I hadn't had the opportunity to do undergraduate research. And I think it's such a great way to dive deep into a discipline and really learn about the process of science, which is something that you really can't fully understand unless you're actually in an active research lab. So having those opportunities for undergraduates, I think, is really important. And as John said earlier, one of the cultural aspects of the campus is viewing the undergraduates as junior colleagues in the research endeavor. And that really kind of has this amazing sort of ripple effect across the entire campus, where so many undergraduates are involved in research. And I think the advantage of CCS is that you get that faculty input right away on sort of how to think about research, when it might be right for you, what kind of research you're interested in, and then how do you go about actually, getting that position. And so having that faculty advisor from the start, I think, is a huge difference maker in the whole research process for a brand new student. So that's something to think about as you're considering where you might go. Faculty contact, what is the opportunity for those research experiences, and that sort of thing.
I just want to reemphasize what John said as well. The interdisciplinary nature of the research at UCSB is really unique. Thinking about where CCS Chem students have done research over the years, I would think, honestly, more research has been done outside of the chemistry department by our CCS chemistry students. And sometimes in surprising ways. Students like in psychology doing chemistry research. I had a student do chem research in the math department. It really surprises me where these connections are made. And the community at UCSB is very good at fostering that. The other thing about research, I think specifically with regard to CCS, is that I found students often get started in research at a much earlier point in their undergraduate career than students in letters and science and engineering. You don't have to be in CCS to do research, but from my experience, students start at least a year earlier than most. I have a faculty member that I know in materials science that every spring quarter, he either calls me or emails me, says, hey, send me your students. I want undergrads and I want freshmen, because he wants to have them in their lab for the long haul. And many students end up being published even before they graduate because of that. So that's a real key part of this, is that not only are you doing research, but you're doing it early enough in your career that you have time to really get into it and accomplish something significant by the time that you're done.
So one of the things that many of you touched on in the process of finding research opportunities that we were sort of hinting at is the role of a faculty advisor, and that it is something that is truly unique to CCS, that each student has a faculty advisor assigned to them when they enter the program. And especially in biology, there's such a range of faculty advisors as well. And I'll just sort of preview that as students' interests change, sometimes their faculty advisor changes in order to help them connect with someone who can really get into sort of the weeds with their particular field. So I'll just kind of state that exists and happens within, especially the biology program. And so I wanted to ask the students about what role has your faculty advisor played in your academic career at CCS?
Sure. So my academic advisor is not here today. Stu Feinstein has been my advisor for all of my undergraduate career. And Stu is really awesome and is very, very important because he would help me do things like choose classes that made sense for my research interests. Because, if you're looking at like that big course catalog, you can get really easily swamped, but it's something else for them to say, okay, you should take this evolution course because that's important to understand for biology, but you should only take it with this professor because that's the way you're going to get the best experience. And they also have been around the university a lot. So Stu, I initially tried to do research in his lab, but he didn't have space for me. So he's like, okay, you should talk to Ken instead because you're going to fit in well in that lab. Stu has also been great for helping me navigate grad school applications and stuff like that, and from like the application process to ultimately choosing a school. So I think that having someone who has been through the, academic process before is really, really, really helpful. And I honestly don't know how successful I would have been if I didn't have someone who had already had a lot of that experience behind them to give me some guidance.
I'll add too, I'll just interject for a moment that the role of the faculty advisor is one that's actually really constant through CCS. It's not that you sort of have this like mystery person that you never meet and like you have to chase them down. Like there's a system sort of in place to require students to meet with their advisors at least once per quarter. So it's not a mystery that Stu would have gotten to know Charlie really well. He would have had many, many opportunities to get to know her, both in his classes and through just meeting with her.
I could also just show up to his office, so that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of just going off of the points Savannah and Charlie just made. My faculty advisor is Dr. Laverman. He's someone that I've been seeing now every quarter for 4 years. I've taken, I think, 7 classes with him over the 4 years. So he's someone I've gotten to know pretty well. I think the faculty advisors can be a really good person to go to for advice, like kind of like Charlie's saying, for advice on classes. I know there are a few classes where I've been able to go to Dr. Laverman and just kind of based on my interests, maybe swap out a few of my upper division courses for other ones that I maybe were a little more interesting to me, but were still really applicable to my major and to my interests. There are also really good resources for sort of letters of rec down the road. I think Laverman wrote me one a while ago. And then they can also be, again, like Charlie's saying, good sources for maybe finding labs you're interested in, but also for figuring out what you want to do after you finish college. I'm personally taking a few gap years before I continue my education in grad school. And Laverman's been really helpful, kind of talking with me and identifying a few jobs within Santa Barbara that I've sent out applications to, so they can be a really good resource for that as well.
Yeah, like having a advisor like Dr. Laverman is just super useful because they're just someone you can go ask a question about like most of your classes, and they help so many students that are like you that they can guide you in directions that you wouldn't have known to go for classes that you'd be interested in, or more classes that would be specific to what you're interested in. I've gone to Laverman for multiple different classes information. He helped me get into my lab, the MRL. Just having an advisor has been super helpful. Even if you just need to talk, they're always pretty much available in their office to talk to you. So it's been really helpful for me personally.
So my advisor is Kathy, and it's been great because the requirements are so flexible. So Kathy helps me choose courses that align with my interests, and it's just really nice to whenever I have a concern or a worry, I could go to Kathy or John for advice, and they're just so knowledgeable, and they make me feel less worried about things I'm unsure about. And I remember last year I was applying to a few summer programs, and they're sometimes I was unsure, or I was doubting myself, but I would go to Kathy, and she was very encouraging and supportive, and it's just great to have this person who will support you, and that's very reassuring.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the most beneficial things about CCS is that you're able to make that connection with the faculty advisor. And so at least speaking for Chem and Biochem, taking that class that first year with Laverman, he really gets to know you and you get to know him. And so through that, for my summer internships, I was able to ask for letter of recommendations, which is really important. And I think also just general advice, because a lot of my friends in LNS don't really have someone to go to. And so I think it's really important, especially your first year, but also throughout your college education, to have someone that you can rely on for advice in terms of classes.
So I got a little tip from Megan that she would like to add in a comment before we go to our faculty. So go ahead, Megan.
Oh yeah. My comment was kind of a little bit back from when Leroy was mentioning that he received an email from somebody, and that email comes to him at the end of every year of, hey, send me some of your students. I need researchers in my lab. Hey, send me some of your students. I just wanted to pipe in and add that as the staff, one of the staff advisors, I received those emails from postdocs, from grad students, from other professors and faculty on campus all the time. And what they're saying is, we just had a CCS student graduate and leave. We want to open this opportunity up to CCS students before we open it up to the rest of campus, because we've had such an amazing track record of CCS students in this lab. And so it like gives me goosebumps saying that. Like, it's so cool that there's just so many people. The reputation across the board is just phenomenal. So those emails come in to myself as the staff advisor, and we send them out to CCS students all the time. So Leroy has one person, the rest of CCS has the rest of campus. That's it.
Just want to give our faculty who are advisors the opportunity to also talk about what it's like for them to be in that role of a CCS faculty advisor, because I think it's really enriching for all of you.
Yeah, I think we're self-selecting for this, right? No one is saying you must participate in CCS. My appointment is totally in molecular cell developmental biology, but I enjoy it. I mean, it's kind of the highlight of my day when I get to chat with a student like Michelle. I mean, I enjoy it when she pops into my office and, we just chat about how things are going. And for me, it's very personal in the sense that, I think back to my college days. I was totally clueless and really just had the good luck that a professor encouraged me to get involved in research and then encouraged me to go to graduate school. And I've never forgotten that. And it made such a difference in my life that for me, it's kind of a way to give back. But I also think it's just really important to train young scientists and future citizens. And the idea that I could work with a student who's just as passionate about whatever their interest is. It doesn't have to match my interest, but they care about what they're doing. It's just so motivating for me. And again, it's not necessarily unique to CCS, but CCS provides this kind of like perfect environment for really, seeking out mentorship. And one of the best things for me is that after students graduate, then we're friends and we stay in touch, and I get to hear about what they're doing and their successes and sometimes their trials and tribulations. And I think for the students who are joining us and again trying to decide where you might want to go, no matter where you go, if you put the effort in, you'll get a good education. I mean, there's no doubt about that. If you'll make it happen. But at some point, you're going to have to seek out mentors for lots of different reasons. And you might need a different kind of mentor relationship depending on the situation that you're in. But never be afraid to ask for help and to try to get that guidance, because most people who are in higher education have stories like this, and they do it because they want to help out and they want young scientists and young students to succeed. So never be afraid to seek that mentorship. And again, I think John spoke to this point about the culture of a campus. How helpful is the whole culture? Does it sound like a place where you can really thrive? Because that's what you want to do. You want to find a place where you're going to thrive, but also be challenged to grow, right? And that can be hard to know. But if you know that someone has your back and that you can get the mentorship you need, then you'll be fine, because you'll have that resource and kind of safety net under you. And you can take ownership of it and take risks, knowing that you've got a mentor that can give you some guidance along the way. So trying to figure that out. I know it's tough doing these virtual tours. I have a high school senior is my youngest son, and he's doing the virtual tours too, and he's trying to figure out where to go. He actually didn't get into UCSB, so you beat him out. So congratulations. But yeah, he's trying to figure it out, and it's hard when you can't visit. So I wish you all the best. I know it really stinks to not have graduation and senior year, not quite the way you felt it would be.
I would just add that I'm trying to think back when I was considering coming to CCS as a faculty member, the sort of advisor-advisee relationship was not really what I anticipated. It's not really what I had come across at other institutions. This might be a little bit unique to biology, but because our major is so diverse, there's a lot of choice in classes. And I'm usually not in the position, or rarely in the position, of telling students what classes to take. More often, I find myself more in the role of therapist, where the student comes in, talks over the pros and cons of a bunch of classes, and I'm just nodding along, and they leave feeling good somehow about having made this decision. But in most cases, they make the decision. I don't make the decision for them. But they still value having someone to talk it over with, perhaps as they gain confidence in, essentially they've made the right decision anyway, they just need some confidence in it.
I think John hit the nail on the head there about some of the advising relationship. I mean, I have a couch in my office on campus that I really miss, the sort of drop in, you know, when I'm in my office and there's a knock on the door, and I never knew who it's going to be, but more often than not, it's a CCS student coming in to talk about, you know, everything under the sun. I mean, sometimes it's class related, sometimes not. There's a lot that goes on to being a student besides just academics, and you know, just the whole social aspect, the living away from home for the first time. There's just so much going on, and it's kind of fun to be a part of that. And you know, I see, like, you know, Justin graduating, thinking back when you first started, you know, you're not the same person you were when you got here, and I get to be a part of that for everybody. You know, watch the transformation from, you know, first day on campus to graduation. It's a huge transformation, and I feel privileged to be able to participate in that in any aspect. And that's just, for me, that's, I think, the most rewarding part of that relationship with students is watching the transformations. When you guys are amazing, and the amount you grow over 4 short years is just, it blows me away every year.
Man, I wish, oh gosh, like, you guys are, I've been sitting in on 5 of these panels, and I just have to say that, like, the kindness almost of this panel is something that I've really been enjoying. So we're gonna ask a question, and then what we'll do is we'll just take a quick, like, check-in break, but we'll ask a question first, and it's kind of a complex one, so we'll get through it first. So I hear CCS students, and they talk about the advanced classes they take, whether that's upper division classes in their first year, whether that's eventually graduate courses in other departments, whether that's more than 4 classes a quarter. CCS students are often pushing themselves in new ways, and they're encouraged to do that. So they're taking these advanced courses, they're working in labs, maybe they have a job on campus in the CCS office, Michelle. Maybe they are also involved in community organizations. And so my question for the students is to talk about your workload a little bit, what the process has been for you as someone within CCS to manage that workload, and to find out kind of where you fit within that.
So I personally didn't have a ton of problems with the workload. I think that it's actually fairly manageable, at least to me. I found that I wasn't taking very many classes at all that were, like, unreasonable. I also had plenty of time to be involved with, like, the cycling team. So granted, I wasn't doing, like, a ton of like other things besides school and research and taking care of myself and riding my bike. But that's what worked for me, and that's what makes me happy. So I think that everyone goes through their own process of finding out what their priorities are, and your priorities are not the same as my priorities. But I was able to sort of fall into a routine that worked for me, and I was lucky to go to a high school that really prepared me for kind of the workload of college life. So it wasn't a huge transition for that, but I can imagine that a lot of other people had to recalibrate, how they think of using their time. And I think that it's a process that everyone figures out eventually. It may be harder for some people than for others, but I think that everyone sort of settles into like their like happy place.
Yeah, I think Charlie kind of touched on a good point, which is that it's kind of different for each person. I know for me, I was kind of neurotic in high school, and I probably did way too many clubs and activities. And that was something that I really tried to focus on not doing in college. So I made it kind of a point to do fewer activities, be involved in fewer things, but really try to give those things a lot more time and a lot more energy. And that worked really well for me. If anything, I felt like I had a lot more free time in college. I was getting a lot more sleep. But I think it varies from person to person, because I do have some friends in CCS and outside of CCS who become really involved in a lot of different sort of activities, clubs, research, and classes, and kind of maybe take a hit on their sleep and are constantly having a hard time juggling all of those different things. So it's kind of just dependent on who you are and how much you want out of the experience, because it's at the end of the day, you're an adult, you're living on your own, and so you get to choose kind of how many classes you're taking, how advanced they are, what kinds of other activities you're doing, whether or not you get into research. It's all kind of dependent on you. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree. With CCS, it can be kind of alluring to like branch out and take like tons of classes, like class here, class there. But if you're just like honest with yourself and you show and like think how much time you can dedicate to your homework and to studying, and you don't overload yourself, I think it's definitely pretty manageable. You just can't procrastinate. Like, even though it's alluring, I'll just do it later. It's important to keep up to date and focus. That way you can do your best. So I found it pretty manageable as long as you stick to that kind of mindset.
So I think with CCS, like so many students take these advanced classes and they go into research, and it seems like a lot, but like no one's making us do this. So it's like things we all want to do. So we're all like really excited about taking like hard classes and doing research. And I know it took me like during my second year, I had a hard time balancing all my classes because I was taking a lot of upperdives. So I learned that I like to not take that many classes. I like right now I'm taking 3 classes and I'm having a great time. Like I could dedicate so much like more time to each class than trying to balance like 5 or 6 classes. So it's just like finding like out how you learn best. And another great thing about CCS is that in your first year, you're put into these intro classes with just all other like students in your major. So you can really develop this sense of community. And when times get tough and you're feeling really stressed, you have all these like friends that you made in the same situation. Like you're taking a lot of the same classes together. You guys can do homework together and study together. So having like my friends has been like really helpful whenever I'm like feeling stressed. And yeah.
So Michelle brought up like a really good point, and I think this is true at least for like the second year chem and biochem. So like me and Matthew and like a few other friends have like our own study group, and it's like ever since we took the first year chem class, like we've all really been spending a lot of time on like the classes that we share together. So definitely being able to have that community helps a lot. And also I think like to each their own, like as everyone already mentioned, like college is kind of the time where you determine what is important to you and what you want to put your time in. Like, yes, for me personally, my first year was like a slight adjustment, but after a while you kind of like see what is important for you and you're able to balance it out.
I don't know if our faculty advisors want to weigh in on that as well, because I know you see the full gamut of students and kind of what they go through after they get brought into CCS and kind of had the world laid out before them almost.
I would just maybe briefly comment, it's not necessarily unique to CCS. I think when you get to a campus like UCSB, there are just so many things that you can get involved in. It's like this huge smorgasbord. And it can be tempting to start piling on as many things as possible and feeling like, oh, I need to do this, 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 and this because I want to make sure that I get the experience. But, you know, as most of the students commented, I think it's really an individual sort of process that you go through. And I would just recommend not doing too much too soon. You know, give yourself a chance to learn how to be a university student, and then, you know, start adding on more things and try to avoid feeling like, oh, if I don't, you know, get involved in these 10 things my very first quarter, I'm going to be way behind. That's not true. So take care of yourself first and learn how to be a good student, and then add all that other stuff on.
I think there's also a difficult transition that many, if not all, students have to go through. Increasingly, many of you will have been straight A students in high school, and I forget what the numbers were last year. I think it was something like 6 students graduated in the entirety of LNS with a 4.0. So there's an adjustment to be made, especially if you know, part of your self-image or your self-worth is wrapped up in grades and the amount of units you're taking. It's important to make a sensible transition to find out what is comfortable for you, as several of the students said, and those comfort levels are very, very different. I've had amazing students who never really took more than 12, 13, 14 units a quarter, and other students who would have been, I think, would have been physically ill if they'd not taken 24 units a quarter. They just needed that level of, yeah, and we all know who I'm thinking. They just needed that level of stuff going on. So you need to find that and find it fairly quickly, but find it comfortably. And all students, I think manage that. But it is a little bit of a shock to the system to start with when you come here and you maybe get a B- in a course and your faculty member is perfectly happy and you're devastated because it's the first B- you've ever had.
I think I just say again, I'm going last so I get the dregs. But for new students, I'm always advising, you know, take the bare minimum your first quarter and see how it goes. You know, if it turns out it's way too easy, great. What a way to start college. You know, it's all those non-academic things that you don't think about in terms of adjusting to college life that can be overwhelming and unforeseen, and, you know, things you've never had to do before. You know, manage your own time, for instance. You know, there's no one there telling you, you know, you should go to sleep now, or you should study now, or you go eat dinner. All that stuff you got to figure out, and it takes a while to get into the swing of that. And then, you know, once that happens, gosh, some of the schedules you guys take, I don't know how you sleep or eat or breathe. And you still maintain your academics. It's pretty amazing, but it is so individual. You know, I have that on one extreme, and then other students that had to work their way through college. So they took you know, less than a full load, and it took them a little longer, but they chipped away at it, you know. So we have that flexibility, and it's all about, you know, what's good for you. In advising sessions, sometimes it's where, you know, you sit down and reflect with students like, hey, is this actually working? You know, you look stressed out, you know, maybe you should back up a little bit and drop a few things and be happier instead of trying to do it all. And it's, like I said, it's really easy to get wrapped up, you know, like, well, everybody else is taking, you know, 14 classes, I should take 15. No, you know, do what's good for you. And sometimes that's, you know, through advising, that's where I can kind of intervene and go like, hey, wait a minute, let's back up, take a whole look at everything and see, you know, is this working for you? And if it isn't, let's make some adjustments. I think that's all I'll say there for now.
So what I'm going to do is, just to give everyone a chance to like not talk for a minute, I'm going to zoom out. And for all of our participants, if you go to the bottom of your screen, there's that reactions button. And I know we're all Zoom experts by now, but if you will just give like a thumbs up, if like, you know, things are going good, like, you know, you're hearing what your questions are about, like things are tracking, you're not like, where am I? What is UCSB? Just to check in with everybody and kind of make sure that like you're hearing what kind of things you are hoping you could hear. We're getting thumbs. Thumbs are good. All right. Just wanted to make sure everybody's kind of awake and going on. All right. So some of our next questions are potentially sort of specific, and maybe, you know, for faculty, sometimes this is kind of a chance to like take a break a little bit, because one of our next questions is about studying abroad. It's not required by any means, and especially in this panel, I would kind of stretch the phrase study abroad to include field research. But I kind of wanted to take an opportunity to check in with our students. Not everybody does it, but just to see if anybody has studied abroad and would like to speak to their experience, or maybe had a friend who did, or field research as well. I also wanted to just kind of say that, you know, the question is, can CCS students study abroad? The short answer is yes, but then there's obviously more interesting things to say about that. So this is a question where like going in alphabetical order may not make tons of sense, depending on your experiences. So we're kind of flexing up a little bit here. Does anybody have anything that they would necessarily want to jump in and be like, yes, I would love to speak to that as well?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit about this. I studied abroad my summer going into my sophomore year in Berlin, Germany, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. I would definitely recommend studying abroad, regardless of where you go. Personally, what I did was I did research abroad, and I think that this was a particularly good opportunity for me because I think depending on kind of what major you are, some majors have a little bit more, or maybe a little more stringent on required courses. So I know if you want to do the biochem major through CCS, there are more required courses, so it can be a little bit difficult to work study abroad into your schedule. But the summers are, for the most part, completely free and up to, you can do whatever you want during the summer. And this was also a good chance for me too, to kind of broaden my horizons in terms of experiencing different kinds of research. I think, like Mitra said, you know, it's always good to try different kinds of research labs, and because you might not always be interested in the one you joined first. And this experience was one that really opened my horizons to materials, which wasn't really something I had thought about at all before coming to college. Yeah.
All right. So I just want to say thanks, Justin, for adding that. You know, different panels kind of respond to this differently, so I always like to throw it out there. One of the things, and I'm sure faculty can sort of speak to this a little bit, is there's always sort of this question of time with study abroad for CCS students. Can I fit it in? Is it even possible? And what I've seen in the other panels is that the bottom line is that if that is something that's of interest to you, the best time to think about it and to plan for it is like once you step on campus. And to really sort of say, I want to make space for this in my schedule. How do I do that? And that's where your faculty advisors can really sort of help you out with the program and figuring out which classes you would need to be physically at UCSB for. And maybe where you have some flexibility to kind of create that space or to go abroad and do a program sort of within that space as well. I don't know if anyone wants to kind of add anything specific to that before we move on. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say for the biology program, it's really very flexible, so it's pretty easy to fit in. But I would encourage students to think about what their aim is of going abroad. So it's possible to go abroad and do research. That's actually probably least common in the biology program. It's possible to go abroad and simply do some general education courses. Had students, go to Italy, go to France, just take a tremendous variety of courses and have a great experience. I've had students go abroad and do targeted classes at a place that is excellent for what they want to do. Midwifery is the example that comes to mind. And then we always have students who take advantage of the tropical biology programs that are run in either Australia or Costa Rica. Tremendous opportunities there. So students use education abroad for a variety of different purposes. And as long as you're getting something out of it, then it fits pretty easily within the biology program.
I'll add too, and if anyone else wants to jump in after that, that my experience at UCSB has been that the Study Abroad Office, their acronym is EAP, so it's Education Abroad Program, but they're some of the most enthusiastic people on campus. They help students find out what kinds of programs there are, what's required to go to those kinds of programs, what their deadlines are. Are there fellowships to go to that part of the world? Is this going to make it so that it's actually cheaper for them to pay tuition for a quarter? They really do run the gamut in kind of enthusiasm. And my way of describing it is, I mean, basically, you can walk into their office and just go, I want to study abroad. And like people rappel down out of the ceilings and like want to talk to you about where you want to go. So I will say that this is a campus that really supports that as an environment and as a learning opportunity. So just want to take the moment to encourage that. So the next question is one that really is about the student experience. I basically can't speak to it at all. Megan can talk about it a little bit from an administrative perspective. And it's about where you lived your first year. And knowing that next year might be kind of strange, maybe it means, down the road, but moving on to UCSB's campus and living in a dorm, wanted to give the students an opportunity to talk about where you lived your first year and what that sort of dorm experience was like.
So I lived in the CCS, I think it's like a living learning community, whatever the CCS specific housing is. It's in Pendola House in Manzanita Village when I did it, probably still is. I chose to live there without pre-arranging roommates. I had an incredibly positive experience living there as a freshman. I actually ended up living in an off-campus housing with one of my freshman year roommates this past year. And it was really helpful for making me feel like I was part of the CCS community, because on a daily basis, I'm really only interacting with other people in the biology program, because that's who I have classes with. But, if you're living in the living learning community, you're constantly bumping into people who are doing like art, music, physics, chemistry, everything. And it's such a close space that, you become better friends with them and you become more integrated into the CCS community. I also found that even if you don't live there, a lot of the kind of social life freshman year revolves around Pendola House. So If you're at all considering it, I would not choose to live anywhere else. I had friends who would just constantly be over at Pendola House just because that's where everyone else was. Like, that's where you go to study. So I thought it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, so my first year I lived in San Nicolas, which is not the CCS dorm. And I had a very positive experience. I think in some ways I was actually kind of glad I wasn't living in the CCS community, only because I think it really helped me kind of broaden my friend groups. Although I maybe didn't become as integrated as I would have if I'd been living in the Pendola house, I think that you have a lot of opportunities in CCS to meet other students through coursework and through different like other CCS events that are held pretty frequently. So I really liked living in a dorm that wasn't affiliated, and I was kind of able to really broaden my friend group. Yeah, and I'm still friends with my freshman year roommates and a bunch of people that I met in the dorms, and still live with. I mean, everyone that I've lived with in the subsequent years were people where there was at least one person that I befriended my first year in the dorms.
Yeah, so in my freshman year, I lived in Manzanita, but I didn't live in Pendola House. So a lot of the time, I would just leave my house and go over to Pendola to hang out. Having random roommates that aren't in CCS is nice because you hang out with your fellow CCS majors like every day, so you get a chance to meet some new people. And even though I don't hang out with them anymore, it was still a good experience to meet new people. But in the subsequent years, you roommate. My two roommates are CCS chem majors, so you meet a lot of people that you become close with, and it becomes fun because you can just like look past your desk and be like, hey, what'd you get on this homework question, or is there homework for this class? So living with CCS roommates has been pretty good.
Okay, I lived in Pendola my freshman year, and like Charlie, I loved it. It was like really fun because everyone there is in CCS, and yeah, like I take classes with other CCS bio majors, but through Pendola I was able to meet like physics majors and computing majors and like writing and lit friends, and it was awesome because sometimes you would just go to the study room in Pendola and there would be like a ton of physics majors there, like doing problems on the board, and then sometimes you could talk to them about the physics. No, I don't really understand physics right now, but it was just nice to like see so many other like motivated students. But yeah, even if you don't live in Pendola, there's like still so many opportunities to get involved in the CCS community. Like all CCS students have 24/7 access to the building, and so like during the day in the building there's just classes, but after that, like late at night, it's just like complete like study space. Like it's so nice to be able to have this like area where you could just get together with a study group and study for tests and do homework together.
Yeah, so I also did not live in Pendola. I lived in Santa Rosa my first year, and Justin kind of already touched on this, but I actually really had a positive experience living not in the CCS community. I think for me, it was just being able to make friends with like people outside of CCS, because like I think your first year you do spend a lot of time like going in and out of the CCS building and having classes, and so getting like able to know like other people, and like even like this year, like my second year, I moved off campus to live with like people that I had met my first year in the dorm. So I think either way, it's like whatever you want to do, you should definitely follow that.
Megan, I don't know if you want to add anything sort of technical about CCS housing. I know sometimes there's kind of questions about like how that even happens. Yeah,
sure. So I love hearing everybody's answers. That was beautiful, and exactly what I usually say is that I'm just going to shorten it. There's people that are like, yes, the CCS people are going to understand me. I am going to get along with them automatically. It's going to be awesome. I will choose to live there. And then other people that are maybe like, I know that is true, and I'm also going to choose to live outside of CCS house because I want to get more extra friends. I don't know, whatever that may mean to you. So thank you all for like saying that in the way that you said it. I will say that the CCS house is not always Pendola, like they've been saying. It's been other houses in the past and could change in the future. Currently within the Pendola house, CCS has 65 beds reserved, I believe, for CCS students. So not every single student in that Pendola house is going to be a CCS student. They make room for roommate requests and random other people to fit in there. So it will be majority CCS students, but not totally. And that if there are more than 65 people that put interest into the CCS house, then that is when housing, the Department of Housing, will have to make those tough decisions of who are those 65 people that get to be in Pendola. So it's not up to us. It's all a housing situation of how they pick that. But yes, Pendola CCS house is great for people.
Great. So there was one thing that I meant to touch on earlier, and I want to take the time to do it before we kind of move in. Back when we were talking about workload, one of the things that I meant to talk about was GE classes, but nobody brought it up, so I didn't think about it. One of the things that is different about CCS is that our GE requirements and the way they're satisfied are actually fairly different from the rest of the university, and even from, I think, most college experiences. And some of you probably already familiar with this, but we just kind of want to touch on it a little bit. So CCS requires that you take 8 courses unrelated to your major, and those will satisfy your GE requirements. And they have to be from a range of departments as well. And the goal there is that you get exposed to other things that are just totally different and new. And the excitement, I think, around that is, I know, right? Is that, oh, there's, I think, something cute going on. Oh, yes, there's something very cute. Is that, oh gosh, there are so many departments at UCSB that you have never taken a class in before. You're in high school, you're taking your AP, whatever classes, like history, woo. Personally, I love it. But like, this is your first chance to take a class in sociology, in feminist studies, in philosophy, in all linguistics, like in all these kinds of amazing things. And we want you to go out there and have those opportunities to take those classes and really learn about something exciting and new. The sort of second part of that I just touch on briefly, because it's kind of a burning question for everybody, is that this is your AP classes don't satisfy those requirements. And so your AP classes didn't go anywhere. It's not like we're like, ugh, AP, whatever. Like, it's still counting for your math and your physics, like things that are still part of your major. And you're still getting credit for those particular classes, and you're getting those units, and they're giving you that kind of boost in your status that might help you graduate earlier. But it's not going to count as those GE requirements. So you're not going to come in and say, ha, I took AP classes in high school, I don't need any more classes, like give me that chemistry. We still want you to go out and have something kind of secondary. And so maybe we'll do just kind of a quick run down the student list of, like, if you have anything that you would particularly like to add about like GE classes you really enjoyed, or something like that, just to kind of hype it up a little bit.
I had a lot of fun doing my GEs because I could kind of take whatever I wanted to, which was majority upper division humanities classes for majors of that particular course. So I took an upper division Black Studies course where I was the only STEM major in the room, and it can be super fun to just show up and be like, hi, I'm here. This didn't have any prereqs. And I found that a lot of people in letters and sciences, my friends there, didn't do that. So I would encourage you to, wherever you end up, to see if you can do that kind of thing, because I find that those kinds of classes were a lot more fun for me.
Yeah, I don't think we've touched on this yet, but CCS also offers a lot of really unique courses that are only open to CCS students. So a lot of the Gs I took were in CCS, and they were super cool. I took a nude painting class. I took a creative writing course. I took a course about sleep. So there's a lot of really cool classes in CCS, and most of those courses will count towards fulfilling your general education requirements, which I think is pretty unique.
Yeah, I personally had a little bit of a different experience with the GE classes because I did a lot of community college work. So I came in with my GETSI certification and I didn't have to do many general classes, but I heard from a lot of my friends that they were able to take classes in a range of different subjects and they all enjoyed them pretty much. So
I think
Matthew, you still take fun classes. Sorry.
I still take fun classes, just not too many.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really like the CCSG policy. I've taken a lot of cool classes. I've taken this English class in the English department, dystopian fiction, which is awesome. Taken food history in the history department. This fall quarter, I took the history of wealth and poverty, and I was like the only like bio major there. And I would go to the professor's office hours, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" Because everyone else in the class is like a history or like a poli-sci major. So that was really fun. And yeah, I just like really like taking upper div humanities classes, like Charlie said as well. It's really fun. You get to learn a lot of stuff, and I know some of my friends took this like history of cities class in like the arts and architecture department, and that sounds really awesome. But they haven't been like teaching that for the past few quarters, so just waiting. I'm just like, I just want to take that class. Yeah, there's just like so many options, and it's great that we have like the flexibility to take like whatever we want in terms of GEs and like discover like different like fields.
I have to say I got really excited to hear Michelle talk about that class because I used to be in the art history department or the history of art and architecture department. So like I know when that class gets scheduled and I know why. And like, so I'll touch base with you, Michelle, and we'll talk about that class.
So yeah, like Laverman always says, like Gs are your one chance to do something that's completely unrelated to your major. So like totally use that opportunity. And like I have taken theater classes, I have taken like religious studies classes, but Justin also brought up that CCS does have a lot of their own GEs. And so I took an ethics class that was offered through CCS that was co-taught by Laverman and another professor. And that was definitely really interesting. And you kind of get a lot of like input because it's not just like the STEM majors that are in those classes, it's also art majors and writing and lit majors. And so it's really interesting to see like different perspectives, and that's like a GE class.
So Megan, I don't know if there's anything that you would like to add. Just checking in.
That bio's great. And chem is also great. And you are doing my job for me. I have nothing to add. Thank you.
I have a thing that I figured I'll add. I've had to say this a little more emphatically in other panels, but I'll just say that one of the things is that the phrase, you know, outside your field of study or like your major area, like you can get clarification about that anytime you want. So like if you're taking a class and you're like, oh gosh, like I'm in the psych department and it's about like cognitive neuroscience, like can I count that? Like you can stop into the office and like be like, hey Megan, I'm thinking I'm gonna take cognitive neuroscience. And she says, that's great, probably not for GE, but I hope you enjoy it. Like, so you can get feedback on that kind of stuff before you enroll, both from your faculty advisors, but also from us. So feel free to ask questions and get those kinds of things answered. So I think we've got time for one more question. And unfortunately, the current situation makes it a bit strange to answer right now, but we'll do the best we can. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So the question we're going to ask is just what are your plans, your future plans for your summer? And I know that right now that's like hard, but what are they? And maybe beyond that as well, which might be more exciting to think about.
So my current plans are sheltering in place and complying with the governor's orders, but I accepted a offer from University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Center to begin a PhD program in molecular biology this August, hopefully. So that's what I'm up to.
I've been fluctuating a lot the last few weeks as to what I want to do, but right now I'm studying for my MCAT. I'm planning on applying for MD PhD programs. I'm taking 2 years off, and I'm probably going to be moving to Portland, Oregon, and doing either working for an industrial chemistry job there, or working in a research lab at OHSU.
With all that's going on, I think I might just take this summer and relax. And you've been taking a lot of hard classes, and I think we all deserve a break sometimes. So probably just relax with hang out with the dogs, the family.
So I'm part of like this 2-year research fellowship program thing called UC Leeds. So my original plan before this whole situation happened was to go to UC Davis to do research in a chemical biology lab on like DNA damage and mutation, which I was really excited about. But now who knows what will happen. So I have to reach out to the PI of that lab and talk to them. But other summer plans include thinking about grad school and applying, and yep.
So yeah, I know the current situation has affected a lot of people's summer plans, but I've been really fortunate. So I have an internship at a biotech company in the Bay Area, and I've been really lucky that because there's only 15 of us interns, they're working as hard as they can to continue the program somehow remotely. But yeah, I'm really fortunate that they're able to do that.
And one of the things I'll touch on, and I don't know if our faculty want to jump in. I know I've kind of relegated you to the sidelines a little bit the last couple of questions, but one of the things that CCS also offers in the form of summer support and encouragement is something called the Summer Undergraduate Fellowship, which is a funding opportunity to support students who want to pursue a research project during the summer months. And I don't know, maybe, I don't know if anyone here ever received one. No, doesn't look like.
Yeah, I did it for one summer. And it's a great opportunity to get funded to do research. And it's supposed to be kind of an opportunity to encourage you to do maybe some sort of independent project. So it can be a good chance to gain a little more independence in the lab, or even if you're still just working with someone else, then it's a good chance to stay in Santa Barbara over the summer and get paid to continue your research.
What kind of research did you do? What was your project?
So my project was looking at how pH affects marine muscle plaque deposition. So just kind of related to improving or creating glues that work in water.
I don't know if our faculty would want to touch on that just a little bit as well. I know they've seen a lot of applications from students from a wide range of things as well, and sometimes they're even on those committees to review those applications coming in.
Sure, I can just briefly comment. I think if you can do research in the summer where you're not distracted with a lot of other things and you can just immerse in research, it really kind of gives you a totally different feeling about how to push a project. And it's great that CCS can come up with the funding to help students do that. It's all donor funds that support that. So CCS has a large alumni base, and those alums understand the value of that and are very generous giving to the program. So I think any time you can do summer research, I would go for it. It's just a different experience. And it's also fun to be on campus in the summer. The campus is different in the summer. But like everyone else, I don't really know what's going to happen this summer. I mean, even whether or not I can go to my own lab is still up in the air. So
I would just add that it's great that the CCS has a specific program for CCS students but there are also other university-wide programs or programs in other departments. A lot of biology students use a program called the Worcester program. And then there are national awards, so the research experience for undergraduates run by the National Science Foundation. So it's certainly not unreasonable for a student to expect to get a couple of summer research experiences, and many of our students do. It's great to be on campus here, but the advantage of the NSF program is that you can go to somewhere completely different for a summer and get a nice research experience at a different campus. So there are a lot of opportunities, and this is another advantage of the sort of faculty advisors, that they can help you navigate the range of possibilities, when a good time to apply is. I know a lot of our students are reluctant to apply in their first summer to an NSF program, but actually it's worth a shot. If you're ready for it and have a little bit of research experience, then absolutely go for it.
So I think we are ready for questions. We hit it right on the head, 5:30. So I'm feeling kind of proud of myself and of all of you. So if you will open up your participants tab, if you have something you'd really like to ask, and it could be a range of, you know, who would be best to answer this question. You've got staff, you've got faculty, you've got students. So if you open up that participants tab and then raise your hand, what we'll do is we'll call on you, and we'll call in the order of those raised hands, and we'll find out what your questions are. And I think I'm excited to hear what kinds of things you have to ask about, and to hear what people have to say about it. So I know it kind of takes a minute to get through the button clicking process and to work up courage to say, you know what, I'm going to ask a question, but we're going to let it happen here.
Should I answer the chat question, or do we read them out? How do we do this?
I think most of the, Annabelle had one. Yeah, Annabelle, we could go ahead and read your question out, and then go into it. John, if you want to read it, you're certainly welcome to.
So Annabelle says, I know the difference between the culture at CCS and at Berkeley was mentioned. Could you go more in depth about that, as I'm considering both schools? Yes, why yes I could. The short version is UCSB has a motto somewhere you see around all over the place, work hard, play hard. And I think that actually sums up the UCSB culture quite well. Sure, some students playing is literal partying. For other students, playing hard is a club sport. We've had CCS students be very competitive in various sports. And I see most students at UCSB have an additional interest beyond academics, and one they take quite seriously. I think maybe this is unfair, but sometimes the sense you got at Berkeley was the motto was work hard, work harder. I didn't get that equivalent sense that students very often had outside interests to the degree that they do here. So that was a noticeable difference. Students here, they do seem more relaxed. I don't know, it's a consequence of having the beaches right by campus, but that does seem noticeable. Megan has her hand raised.
I do have my hand raised, and I know I was muted. As somebody who has been receiving prospective students and visitors for the past 2 years at CCS, I'm saying this just as a factual statement, not for any other reasons, but usually those people were coming through and they were touring all the UCs of California, or the UCs in some of the state schools or whatever, but they were doing that California up-down thing. Anybody who had come from Berkeley said, wow, people here are smiling. They're happy. What is going on? And that was from the students, from their parents, from their siblings, from their animals that they were walking around. And it just, the first time that I heard it, I was like, weird, what's going on up there? And then I heard it every single time. So that's coming from people that are visiting us. So I've never been on foot on Berkeley's campus ever. So I don't know. But everybody was just like, wow, y'all are happy, and staff are happy, and students are happy and helpful. And we walk around campus and look sort of confused, and people just walk up to us and say, can I help you find somewhere? Are you lost? And genuinely like wanting to help. So that's what I have felt on campus for the past 5+ years, because I went to school there. So
I think we're going to take some additional comments too, from Justin and then Charlie.
Yeah, I can just say, because I've never been to school at Berkeley, but I remember I too was kind of in between going to Berkeley and to UCSB when I was a prospective student. And when I went to visit both schools, I went to Berkeley and I was walking around, and it felt like everyone was super sad, kind of like Megan just said. And I sat in on classes at both schools, and I just remember coming to UCSB, and it just seemed like the students were really excited to be there. They seemed a lot more intrigued in the subject, and maybe the difference too could have been maybe the classes I was sitting on. But yeah, I just think that UCSB, I think the students tend to be pretty happy in general. And yeah, I know too, a lot of my friends who chose to go to Berkeley have just told me a lot of kind of horror stories about the sort of culture there. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because when I was going through the same process, I was touring UCSB with a friend who had the same decision that Annabelle has of CCS or Berkeley. And she ended up going to Berkeley, which she's managed to make the most of her time there. It's not a bad school, but I remember her expressing to me that she felt that, maybe CCS would have been better for her because of what everyone's been saying, that it tends to be a more relaxed school without sacrificing academics or anything like that.
And then Mitra, I think we're going to get a final comment from, and then I think we'll move on to another question, because I feel like we're punching down on Berkeley. So we'll move on to maybe the next question after that.
Yeah, so I actually did want to say, like, we all might be biased because we did end up choosing UCSB. So definitely you should personally consider what is best for you. But I mean, like, I live in the Bay Area. I have a ton of friends who are doing chemical biology at Berkeley right now while I'm doing biochem here in UCSB. And I think the biggest difference is the collaborative environment that UCSB fosters. And I think that is like definitely much more important, at least for me personally, versus whereas Berkeley, I see a lot of my friends are just working hard individually, and there's not really there's a lack of community, I think. And I think while you're in college, it's kind of important to feel like you're not alone. So that's it.
Glad, before we move on to the next question, I was in a panel with the dean, and a student asked a question in a very vague way. They weren't necessarily speaking about a particular university, and they were saying, what's the sort of competitive atmosphere at CCS? And I let our dean speak to this because I felt like he would be very passionate in his answer, and he was. And basically, emphatically, 100%, he said, we are all in competition with ignorance, and we are not in competition with each other. And that was a thing that I felt like he phrased it really beautifully. I logged it in like my mental statement catalog, and I felt like it really was a great way to characterize like the mental environment at CCS and what that's like for students. And I'm not sure where the names separate, so I'm going to say Mahi has their hand raised, and then we had a question from Serena in the chat. So we'll do the raised hand first, and I'll unmute you, and then we'll do Serena's question.
Hi, I'm Mahika. So I was going through the course catalogs, and I'm a bio major, And so most of the courses in terms of like neuroscience have the requirement of being a psych and brain sciences major. Are CCS bio students exempt from that? And I guess like Charlie, what was your experience like trying to focus in neurobiology?
So I didn't take any neurobiology courses through psychological and brain sciences. I took the neurobiology stuff offered through the MCDB department. And that was really great for me because my interest lies in like kind of cellular stuff. I don't particularly know what interests you about neurobiology, but I was able to take those neurobiology classes starting very early on. Stu, my advisor, teaches MCDB 153, and I got to take that my freshman year. So.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I was probably looking in the wrong place. That answered all my questions.
No worries.
Megan, I felt like you had, because you were shaking your head no, and so I didn't know if you wanted to elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll take this opportunity to elaborate a little bit on that. So you mentioned that there was these prerequisites for psych and brain science students only, and could CCS students bypass that? And I want to say no, absolutely not. Not without the instructor's approval, which means that you would need to go and ask the instructor, hey, I have a particular interest in this. This is where my history lies. I've taken this biology course and this OChem course and this whatever, and I think that qualifies me for being in this upper division course. And so I just know that there's a lot of rumors out in the universe about CCS students being able to like do whatever they want without anybody saying anything. And so it's
Oh, I think she froze. Oh no, she froze. But basically, I can say kind of what Megan was going to get at was that there are limitations from other departments because they have their own majors and they need to like make sure that those classes can satisfy their requirements. So any sort of exception to those rules has to come like by having a direct conversation with the instructor, and then they give you a special little code and you go and punch in that code, and that's how you get into that class. So there's ways to talk to people, and CCS is definitely has a reputation of having stellar students, as people were talking about recruiting for labs. Like it can go that way in classes too. There are certainly professors out there who'll be like, oh man, like CCS students are great to have in my class. So it's give and take, but there's usually not like kind of a blanket backdoor way in for CCS students.
Okay.
That helped.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so Serena had a question in chat, which I saw that Kathy also responded to. Serena, I don't know, do you still want to ask your question for sort of broader response, or where are you at? Maybe.
Well, maybe I could expand on my response. The question was, you know, when is it appropriate to contact faculty about potentially joining their labs? And I think, as you heard from most of the students, it really depended on their interests and when they felt they were ready to commit to that. And, you know, some students start their very first quarter in a lab. Other students wait until they kind of get their feet under them and know how much time they're going to have. But even if you're ready to start in a lab, you may not be able to find a position right away, because it depends on whether or not the lab has room. Do they have a student, maybe a grad student or a postdoc, who wants to get some help and train you? So there is a little bit of luck to it. I think most everyone would agree. But if you really want to get in the lab, you kind of come up with a game plan, and your advisor, your CCS faculty advisor, can help you figure out, you know, sort of how to make progress in that area, and also help direct you towards different labs that match your interests. And for the biology majors, the first year colloquium, which John can speak more to since he teaches it, in the colloquium, you learn about all the research that's being done on campus, and you start to think about making those matches. And you're hearing from current students and grad students about, things to think about when you're joining a lab. So there's a fair amount of guidance that you get, and I don't think you should feel like in a super rush to like join like right away. I would give yourself some time to figure out how to be a student and then find the right lab. That's all.
One thing I usually tell the students, at orientation over the summer, before they start on this process, is that it is largely random. There's a surprising random element to it. So when I meet with a group of biology students at orientation, I tell them there's probably going to be at least one student who, the first door they knock on, that professor had woken up that morning thinking, oh, I've really got to find some more undergrads for the lab. And it's just perfect timing. And there'll be another student for whom it is, you and not I'm talking like the Monty Python cheese shop sketch, where it is a different excuse every time. Oh, I would, but I'm going on sabbatical. I would, but I've got no more chairs in the lab. Well, I would, but everyone finds something eventually. As far as I can tell, it is just a crapshoot, whether you get lucky or whether you get unlucky. So I tell students that in advance so that you don't think it's anything to do with you when you're the one who has to take 5 or 6 attempts when somebody else got lucky the first time. I think there is a high random element to it because labs don't have infinite space. People do go on sabbaticals. People do have different demands. And so you've sort of got to be in the right place at the right time. But keep trying and you will find a place. We haven't had anyone in my 13 years who failed to find a place. It just gets a little frustrating for some, and for others, it's just totally luck out.
I think we've got a comment from Justin, and then we'll answer Julia's question next, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and others might have different opinions on this, but from personal experience when I was applying to labs too, I found what I think really helped me was I would kind of narrow my list to a few labs that I thought were most interesting, and then I would read some of the most recent papers that were published from those labs. And then when I would email the faculty member to try to set up a meeting, I would kind of touch on specific parts of their research that I had read about that I thought was really interesting. And I think that that can kind of show too that when you're applying to these labs that you're truly interested in what they're doing, because I think a lot of students kind of just want to get into a lab to boost, and this might not necessarily apply to a lot of CCS students, but in general, I think a lot of students are just trying to get into labs to kind of boost their resume. And if you can show that you're genuinely interested in what that person's doing, then I think that can also help a lot with successfully getting into labs.
All right, so the question we have from Julia is about whether it is common to double major within CCS and then, or to have a minor in the College of Letters and Science. So I'll start off with the short answer, which is it is not common to double major. It's not impossible, but it's not common. And the reason for that is that really taking the time to do all these kinds of requirements does take time. And one of the sort of complications of double majoring is if you go outside of CCS, you are now also beholden to all the degree requirements of that college as well. And so for students who have taken those 8 CCS GEs and they're like, haha, I'm done, and now they double major in the letters and science, now they also have to satisfy letters and science GEs. And for some students, that's easy. For some students, that's just absolutely not worth it. And this is one of those questions where your faculty advisor would be a great person to touch base with and say, I'm thinking about doing this. What kind of effect would that have? The minor is sort of a different story. If you minor in the College of Letters and Science, you don't have to do all the letters and science GEs, but that doesn't mean you are committing to these additional classes. So for many students, that's sort of a matter of, you know, what kind of time and schedule you have and what your interests are and how much you want to dig into that thing. So I don't know if we have students who want to speak to that specifically, or even just some of our faculty advisors a little bit.
Well, I just say that generally majoring, double majoring, minoring, the names on your degree certificate matter a lot less than what you can do and what you can demonstrate. So I absolutely, so if a student, for example, whether they're chemistry or whether they're biology, if you have a strong interest in mathematics, then I encourage you to follow that as far as you can. And absolutely in both majors, there is the opportunity to develop a strong mathematical skill set. I might encourage a student to get a minor in it. It really doesn't matter. But in almost hardly any circumstance would it be worthwhile actually to get the double major. Anyone can see the classes you've taken, and for grad school, they're looking at your transcript in some detail. For a job, they care about what you can do, not about what it says on your certificate. So you would want some demonstration, and that's where CCS is excellent, because in all this lab work, hopefully you're going to have some outcome, whether that is a poster at a conference or a paper, and that's your chance to demonstrate some of these things that you can do. So being able to do something is better than having a line on your certificate.
I agree. I mean, even when I was a letters and science advisor, I met a number of students who minored, and most of them did it for passion almost more than anything else. And I really encouraged that. I said, you know, this is a minor. It's not necessarily what you've decided to dedicate the rest of your life to, but it's something that you want to take classes in and think about. And I've met students who basically accidentally minored because they kept taking classes in a particular department purely because they enjoyed them. So yeah, I think we answered your question, Nico, pretty well. And feel free to reach out, and you know, if you come to UCSB and you decide to think about that question some more, just feel free to talk to us. Yeah. There was a question about, you know, a rumor that Chem students don't like CCS housing. I think that got answered pretty well. And then I'm kind of losing track of the chat, I think, a little bit, but I think we've answered all the questions in there. Does anybody have any additional questions they'd want to add? Or John, you might have something you'd like to say too.
I was just going to add that it always gets a bit more complex. There's a couple of things that are more like professional qualifications that you can do as a minor. So if you think you might want to go into teaching, there are some qualifications there. There's now a professional writing minor, I think. I think they can be worthwhile because it is a specific set of classes that have been put together to show that you have some sort of qualifications in this area. So those sort of more professional type of qualification, I think they can be worthwhile. And we've had students do both of those, I think, through CCS.
That's true too. And I will add as well, just that there are some departments that don't offer minors. And for some of them, this is very much by design. So you are also, if you're thinking about a minor, and the minor is the thing that you want, then sort of step one is to find out if there even is a minor in that thing that you're interested in. So there are some departments that have their hands full with majors, and they've got plenty, thank you very much, and they just don't have minors available. Would CCS accept summer classes from other UCs? Yes, we do, and you can add them to your UCSB transcript so that when we pull up your course history, there's that class from UCLA. The only thing is, if you want it to count for something specific, then you just need to talk to somebody. Probably turn in the syllabus that you took, keep records of what it was that you wrote for that class. So if you're trying to have it satisfy your ethnicity requirement, then it won't do that automatically, but you can certainly talk to me, and we can work on making that happen if it fits. So that was kind of a very brief staff answer. But yes, so you can transfer classes in just to, like in almost any other transfer class. It can be part of your transcript. I think we're sort of getting close. I'm not seeing tons of stuff come in. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything that they just sort of really feel like they should say before we head out for the evening. Kind of a wide range of things. And I think we've covered a lot in the last 2 hours. Go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, I was just going to just briefly mention that if anyone who's visiting is interested in potentially thinking about med school, feel free to send me an email and I can fill you in on some of the details. There's been a few private chat conversations I've been having. It is possible to do pre-med through CCS, but there's some things you should be aware of, and check out some different programs to see what would potentially fit best for you. And I'm happy to talk with you individually about that. The other thing I just wanted to say is try not to be, too discouraged about the fact that you can't visit campuses and that everything is just so different than you imagined it would be this time of year as you're graduating from high school and thinking about college. We're all sort of trying to figure out how to do this. And I think, we're going to be better for it in the end because we've had to think about some things that we've gotten a little bit complacent about. And students are, amazingly resilient, and you will figure this out. And no matter where you end up going, you will get a great education. And so try not to stress about it too much, and enjoy your senior year, and, just make a decision, but make it, don't be afraid to go with your gut to some extent, but you'll be fine no matter where you land. Just, you'll land on your feet. That's all.
Thank you for saying it, Kath, because I do think it's true, and I think this is sort of a really unusually stressful time to be thinking about where you want to go. And so we're certainly happy to be able to host something like this to help you kind of think a little bit more specifically about this particular program. One of the other things I'll add, and maybe I'm volunteering them, so we'll see, but a number of faculty have expressed that they're happy to have students reach out and ask to attend one of their Zoom lectures, or just kind of see what might be going on in a classroom, since the sort of physical visit isn't as available. So I want to encourage you that if there's a class on the schedule and you think you would have liked to have attended if you were physically on campus, I'd still encourage you to reach out and say, I'm a prospective biology or chemistry student, and I was wondering if I could just, are you teaching a class in the next week that I could observe? And, I think everybody's been very encouraging of that, because they're encouraging of it when students are physically here too. So I just want to encourage you to reach out in that way, and to not feel like that's a horrible inconvenience to anybody. It's certainly something that a lot of people really welcome and enjoy. All right, I think we've done it. It is 5:57, and I just want to take a few minutes to really say thank you and give like my virtual applause and my physical applause to the cats, to the participants, to everyone who asked such great questions, and to really just thank you all for 2 hours of your Tuesday afternoon to talk about CCS Bio and Chem. So I just want to give my virtual applause. I'm sure other people are kind of giving their chat comments or just, that kind of enthusiasm. So thank you everybody for being here and taking that time. Yep. And like I said, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We've got little virtual hands clapping. We've got thank yous in the comments. So I think this went really well. And if you have any additional questions, especially before May 1st, feel free to reach out. Feel free to reach out to me or Megan if you have questions about like CCS in general, UCSB requirements, all that kind of technical like stuff. if you have questions specifically about like your department, the field, like that kind of thing, where like someone who got an English major maybe can't help you, you know, reach out to those faculty in those departments as well, and you know, see what kind of answers you can get. So we're going to be happy to help you out and to talk to you, and I think get to know some of you more in the near future. So, all right, I am going to say thank you, everybody. We're at 5:59. I feel like this couldn't have gone more precisely. So I just want to say thank you again and wish you all a lovely evening.